I was born in Belfast, north of Ireland, on the 31st of the 12th, 1935. I went to a state school called Rosalind Street School, and from there I went to what was called an intermediate school, which is in between state and high school, until I left school at the age of 16 and was apprenticed as an industrial and commercial photographer with Short Brothers, the aircraft factory who built the Sunderland flying boats and Sterling bombers. And I worked there for about 18 months until my parents decided to follow my two brothers to Australia. In Ireland, when I was working in the aircraft factory, it was really good because it was also a publicity studio, part of a publicity studio for the the aircraft that they sold, and there was the photographic department was linked with a reproduction type, printing type area. A few girls worked there, and it was nice to get them out in the dark room, catch them halfway through the dark, and I won't say any more. Oh, well, I loved living there. I was only 17 when I left, and I remember it wasn't exactly hatred, but you didn't speak to Catholics. Protestants and Catholics were like chalk and cheese. But it wasn't a shock, but it was great to find out that it wasn't like that here. When we came to, it was lovely. Yes. It was just the wide open space that was most impressive, and in our the house I lived in, we had a double-story house, bedrooms and bathrooms upstairs, and we had a lounge, kitchen, a dining area, and a kitchen, and a backyard, which was the backyard would be about half the size of the entrance way in here, with tiles, and the back entry. There's a back door into an entry which was cobblestones. Bread carters could come round the door with horse and cart. And I became a friend of one of the bread carters, and he used to let me drive his horse, shift the horse when he wanted to go up a couple more days, and that was good. Oh no, it wasn't a horse that he had. He had a little electric van. I wasn't seeing little electric van, that one. He allowed me to drive the electric van. Because it was easy, that one. And this was about, I think it was 1952, and arrived in Ballarat in September. It rained right up until Christmas Day. Mum had told Dad to leave all his overcoats and things at home, and so he wasn't very happy about that. He had to go and restock. And we lived with my brother, who lived in Durham Street at that stage, until he decided to go up north. Then we boarded with a few different landladies till we decided to go north too, to be closer to her. Mum was a bit of a matriarch, and she wanted to be closer to her two sons. There's one in Brisbane and one further up north, and Stayed there. I did my national service there and worked in two hotels, different hotels there. Then one of my brothers came back to Ballarat and he spoke to my old employer, Norman Harvey, well-known photographer in Ballarat, who said he would employ me if I came back. So I came back here then. Oh, well, we were told it was sunny Australia, but you know Ballarat. And we arrived in September. Mum had told Dad not to bring any overcoats or anything with him, so he wasn't very happy when it rained almost every day up till Christmas. And apart from that, it was it was good to live here. Oh well. It hasn't changed a lot, like the Sturt Street. We lived at Durham Street up near the City Oval, and that area I don't think has changed much at all. I used to walk down into town, sometimes caught a tram. There was a tram that used to run right from there down into the city, but. Well, my parents decided to, because my eldest brother, my second eldest brother, there's only three boys in the family, and my second eldest brother lived in Brisbane, and my eldest brother was living here when we got here. He decided to go north, and Mother, being a matriarch, wanted to know what her boys were doing, so we had to pack up and go to Brisbane. So I was happily working for Norm Harvey, the photographer here. It was great. It was a great time. But I wasn't old enough to look after myself then. And so I had to go. And that was there. I got a job as a printing photographs, which wasn't very good. It was, one of those better snap people, go around beaches and that sort of thing, taking photos and on the street. And I wouldn't blow on myself to do that, so I just did the darkroom work. You start with, you had to mix your own chemicals, your own developing powders and fixing powders. There was you took a photograph on film, developed the film, and let the film dry. Then you'd print it. You'd put it. You could do proofs, just a contact print, which is a bit small. But then you'd go to an enlarger and put it in enlarger, and put it in a dish of developer. Wash the developer off and put it in a fixing bath that fixed it. I've forgotten the names of the chemicals now, but then you'd wash it for half an hour, put it through a glazing machine, which there was matte prints and glazed prints. If it was a matte print, you'd put it in the drying machine, which was a cylindrical hot drum. What do you call it? It's a shiny surf drum. I've forgotten the name of the surface, but it was used through on a mat. And if it was a matte print, you'd put it face down to the mat. If it was a glazed print, you'd put it upright so that it was dried on the shiny surface of the hot drum. It would fall off then because it was heated, when it was dried, and that was your prints. So then I left there and got employment in a hotel. It was a Globe Hotel in Adelaide Street as a drink waiter and houseboy. I got more money on tips than I got on wages there. I never ever if I missed a tram, I'd just get a taxi. I had so much money in my pocket because I was well looked after. I used to make money by having a few ties in my dressing room and a jacket. I wasn't allowed to serve people in the lounge room unless they had a gentleman tie or a jacket on. So I'd lend them one, and I'd always got a big tip for one that never lost a tie or a jacket. And after that, I went straight into national service from there. When I came out, I worked in another bigger hotel in one of the main streets. I've forgotten the name of it. It's just in another hotel as a bar manager and cellar man until I decided to come back to Ballarat. Then I back to Ballarat and worked in I think first job I had to go fruit picking in Mildura for a while until I got a job at the Holdenson and Nielsen's butter factory in Curtis Street, which was almost opposite Hines Lane in Little Curtis Street, next to the drill hall. Stayed there for about 3 years. I got the sack there for decking the butter maker because he was a bully. He slapped me across the face because I told him that he was pushing the trolley into the churn. There was a rail off, and I kept telling him, and he smacked me in the face and told me to do what I was told. So I put him on the floor, punched him, and told him to, if he got up, I'd kick him in the head, and he crawled into the manager's office and reported me. He was a shareholder in the place, this fellow, so I had to go. He couldn't sack me for that, but the first day I was a bit late coming to work on a Saturday morning because I used to have a bit of a late night on a Friday night. And I got the sack for not ringing and telling them that I wouldn't be in that day. So after that, I got a job at Villiers as a process worker. On a lathe, or grinding. It was a grinding cam shafts and that sort of thing. My brother was an engineer, and he taught me before I went in there how to do all that sort of thing. So, in fact, my brother was the engineer in charge of building the Spud factory here. What's it called? McCain's, yeah. My brother was the engineer that supervised the building of that, because he was an engineer. My friend John Morley was one of the first people who lived in Wattle Avenue, and when he was living here, he would have to park his car in Gilly Street and walk in because it was still swampy. And so did the postmistress. She had to do the same with her bicycle and walk in there and do her deliveries. And of course I lived there much later. There was roads in there when I went to live there. But he was my best friend. He was like a father and a brother to me, and gave me good advice. Things that I wanted to buy a gun at one stage, and he said, "No, you're not buying it." That was it, because it was my friend. I said, I don't know why I wanted it, but just to have one. He said, if you get into a fight or something, you're likely to do some damage with it, and that's it. Yes, he's a very good friend all my life. And some of his children still visit me. As I told you before, my mother followed my brother to Queensland, and then they came back back here again. So they boarded here for a while in various places. Then they got a house in the Housing Commission at Wendouree, because they didn't have enough money to buy a house anywhere. They never ever owned a house in their life. And that's how I came to live in Wendouree. And I met, as I said, my best friend, John Morley, through Norm Harvey, the photographer, because they were friends. And Norm introduced me to Jack Morley, and I hit it off with John better than Norm, because Norm was, Norm lived way over the other side of Ballarat, and John Morley lived close by, so that's how I became my best friend. The only big changes I've seen was the shopping centre, the main shopping centre, and of course the I think I wrote a little bit about this here in the neighbourhood house. I've forgotten the name. Moore's Heads. They presented Wendouree West with a hall as a youth centre, which was opposite the village now. Did you know of this? Yeah. Well, I used to run a club for, and I've got it written here. A youth club. We had a youth club there, and I used to teach phys ed, parallel bars and vaulting horse, and George Brooks, was another leader there. He did that too, and then John Morley, my friend, and I used to take people bushwalking, all boys, up around Mount Cole. I was tail end Charlie, and John was to make sure none of them strayed off. And just about every weekend, in a bit better weather, we'd go up there. We had a little hut there actually too. We could cook a meal in, and it was very good. Right, cool bushwalk. It was just a great big hall, like similar to a big dance hall. And as I say, we had a vaulting horse and parallel bars, tumbling mats in there, which could be put away if people had 21st birthdays and that sort of thing in there. And probably wedding receptions. I've never been to a wedding reception there, but I probably would have had that sort of thing. In Ireland, I was always a member of Cubs, Boy Scouts, a church organisation called Life Boys, and it was for the younger generation in the way. It's the Boys Brigade. You've got a Boys Brigade here, I know, in Australia. And they were ran on a military type basis. The Cubs and Scouts were more Baden Powell sort of thing, more camping. But the Boys Brigade was, you'd have an inspection when you first went to a meeting. You have to be your shoes polished, and then when that inspection was over, you'd go and get undressed and get gym togs on, and do phys ed, just normal touching your toes and running in the spot, this, that and the other, maybe a few games, and then you do tumbling, vaulting horse, parallel bars. That was what we do there. And I did that right up until we left to come to Australia. 17, No, I was September we arrived in 52, and my birthday's in December. I was 17 in that December. Oh, they were both in the linen trade, you know, processing the linen. My father was what was called a rough term was called a slasher, but it was it was actually a linen dresser, which is, I don't know, I think we put patterns into that, you know, we put the threads in different positions so that it would, you know, I don't know whether you've ever seen an Irish tea towel with tea towel written on it. It sort of work out the way the lines of different colours had to go into that when it was going through the machine to, as it was just thread, and turn it into cloth. Mum only worked up until she got married, and she never worked after that. She once tried to work in a fish and chip shop. She only lasted one day, and that was the end of it. Two brothers, the eldest one, as I said, was an engineer, and I think I mentioned before the place here that he supervised the building of the Canes there. He was the engineer there and supervised the building of it. But then the second brother, he was in Ireland. He was a truck driver for a company that picked things up, materials up at the docks, and delivered it around anywhere in Belfast where it had to go. And then when he came to Australia, he became, I think he, even before he left, he was in he worked in a printing business, and then he followed that up here in Australia as in printing. But he was mainly, you know, into doing assessment, you know, pricing things, you know. What do they call? What's the word for that? Do estimates. My first boss, as I say, was Norm Harvey, the photographer, and he used to take me round to the pub and say that word thing. I used to say, "You can't do this," or something, and it sounded like another word that you might imagine. He thought that was one of the biggest jokes we'd ever heard, that one. But he was a great fellow. I loved that boss, the best boss I ever had. Oh, well, on a hot day, perhaps he'd say, we'd be working in the dark room, he'd say, "It's a bit hot, let's get in the car and go up the lake and buy a bunch of grapes or something. We go up and sit and watch the swans and have a chew the grapes. And then when it got a bit cooler, he come back and maybe work to 7 o'clock, you know." He was a great fellow, and I was, you know, invited to anything that was going in his house, and he was also a member of Wise Men and that sort of thing. He'd take me to some of those functions. Yes, he was the best boss I ever had, that man. And I've had some good, you know, no complaints. There's only one I had was in Brisbane, was a photographic place I worked for. They were nasty people. Because they just paid a friend of mine just the normal wage that for your age. Yet they expected us to do the same number of prints that a journeyman, what they call a journeyman, a tradesman would have got. And my friend that worked there, he'd worked for a big photographic studio. And of course, as I said, I'd worked at Short Brothers and also for Norm Harvey, and I was well qualified, but we got about half of what the 21-year-old, but they expected us to produce the same amount of materials. We didn't last long. What we used to do was go out at lunchtime and not come back. And so we finished up getting the sack because we said, you pay us, you pay him, and we'll come back. I've got no complaints about it. I'm quite happy to live here. Since I've lived here for so long. The longest I think I've been away from it was about 3 years in Queensland, and apart from that, maybe a year or two shifting around the city. The rest of the time I've been in Wendouree. I lived in Wattle Avenue from I was about 15 till I got married I was 21, I think. Yes, after that I shifted around a little bit. We lived in lodgings, my wife and I, well, not lodgings, but rented places until we had enough money to. Well, I owned a block of land actually, and my brother needed some money. That's how I got it. He asked me would I like to buy it. This was before I was married, and I said I didn't need it, but I said, oh yeah, I'll buy it. So I traded that in on a house after I got married. And I was my deposit for a house in Dover Street. I lived there till I just in a weatherboard house, and got tired of painting. Looked for a brick one with aluminium windows, and that was it. So I've been here since. Well, I worked at E. Lucas & Co. for 23 years as a pattern drafter and grader, which involves making all different sizes of patterns for ladies' clothes, outerwear and underwear. I met her there, and there was very few men worked there, and there was very few of us got out of there unmarried to one. So that's how I met her. Actually, I was very friendly with her supervisor, and or foreman. He was a foreman, and more or less introduced me to my wife. And said, nobody ever asks her out, you should ask her out. I said, right. Things went on from there. He was a good, nice fellow. Len Wilson, his name was. Oh, mainly the driving. Mainly the driving. Just there's a few little lovers' lanes we could go to, and there's Joan loved chips. She was the cheapest girl I've ever had. She just liked chips. Didn't chocolates, no, chips. Go down Bridge Street and buy a pack of the chips at Rudy Hager's, and she'd be happy.
And where did you get married?
Burnbank Street Methodist Church. 1952. No, was it 1952? 50, yeah, I suppose it would be. Yeah, 52, I think it was.
What do you remember of that day? What do you remember of?
Not much. My best man and a few friends from work had taken me out. Last day of freedom, I reckon, and I even got checks sent back to me to re-sign because I ran out of money from some of the pubs I've been in. They took me round, I think, every pub in Ballarat and finished up. I had to write a cheque to get some money at North Britain, I think it was. And I got it sent back to me a couple of weeks later. If I'd mind writing another cheque, because the signature was illegible and the bank wouldn't accept it. Oh dear. Typical bachelors. I boarded for a while. There was a lady called Miss Gourley from Bryant and Gourley's, and she told us a lot of things as it happened in the future. That she was a JP and she had to sign different papers to let things happen or something. And she was a lovely lady. And then we rented a place in Wendouree West. And then from there, put a deposit in a house in Dover Street and bought that. And then we decided it was a weatherboard place, and tired of painting, so we decided to try and get a brick veneer with aluminium windows that I wouldn't have to paint anymore. Yes, that's, you know, as I say, I was starting to get a little bit more money in the bank then. Yeah, we've only been here about 15 years, I suppose. Well, I can't remember it looking much different, to be honest, because I would have been in the better times probably, you know, before the swamp dried up. Not like my friend that had to park his car out in Gilly Street and walk in, and as I said, the postal lady had to do the same with her bicycle. No, it was good. I liked living there. You know, a lot of friends there, good neighbours. I don't know how I'd ever got a bad name. I suppose if it was one or two, you know, give a dog a bad name and it sticks. Yeah, lots of good friends in Wendouree.